Hello, boys and girls. Today we are going to work on creating a haunted house inspired by Mary Blair. Now, for those of you who do not know, Mary Blair was an artist that worked for Disney, and she was very influential in creating a lot of different types of backgrounds and animation styles that we see in the older Disney movies. Some of her work is actually still seen today on Disney rides such as It's a Small World. But Mary Blair was very well known for having a very unique style. As you can see, it involves a lot of shapes. So a lot of what we're going to be doing today is just using shapes to create our haunted house. It's not going to be a lot of using anything else but shapes. So we're going to start by, first and foremost, just making a background color. And since we're doing a haunted house kind of theme, I have a feeling we should make the background feel kind of spooky. So we're going to click on the background. Usually that is Command or Control, and you're going to change the background. And since we're trying to make this kind of spooky, I'm actually going to do gradient, and I'm going to do like a dark color or maybe even a light one. So one of these two radial grays, just to kind of give it a little bit of a spooky feel. That actually feels pretty spooky. So now the next big thing is I want to start with just doing the shapes for my haunted house or haunted castle. And a lot of what we saw for the shapes were more rectangle, like the outside shapes were more rectangles or squares. So I'm going to do a lot of rectangle shapes. So I'm going to click on the rectangle, and I'm going to start with just clicking and bring the rectangle in and kind of just stretching it a little bit. So I'm actually going to kind of make this almost look like a haunted castle. So I'm going to first start with that rectangle, and I'm going to duplicate it. So I go to Edit and then Duplicate. Now, I'm not worried too much about colors right now. I really just want to set up how it's going to look at the moment. So I'm really just kind of playing with placement right now. I want to make sure that my rectangles almost are equal to try and make sure that I have some symmetry or sameness to this. So now I'm going to duplicate this again, but this time I'm going to first make sure it's right up against that one, this rectangle, and I'm going to make this taller. And you can do whatever you really want to with this, boys and girls. You don't have to do the same thing that Miss Sika is doing. It is up to you. But Miss Sika is just trying to have a little bit of fun, and she wants to make sure that everyone is able to do this. So if you want to copy what Miss Sika is doing, you are more than welcome to. And she's going to make this middle part wide, because usually there's one area in the castle that everyone kind of goes into, like that front door sort of part. And I'm actually going to make this a little bit shorter. Not as short as those sides, but a little bit shorter. So now this is where I kind of want to play a little bit with color. So I'm going to first make some very basic decisions with this. So I am going to maybe start with doing just some basic colors. And so maybe what I start with is just having everything either like black or gray. So I'm going to start with making these actually black, like dark gray actually. And I'm going to do different shades of black and dark gray, just so that way I have some variation. Because one of the things that you should know, boys and girls, is that she would use a lot of different colors. Mary Blair would use a lot of different colors. So it was always bright. But since this is haunted, we don't want to do that. We want to have very dark colors. Now, if we remember, we had a lot of different shapes in all of these. Okay, so there were a lot of different shapes within the other shapes, as we can see, boys and girls. So as you can see, like this is a rectangle right here, but you've got like squares and other shapes inside. And that's where we're going to want to play a little bit with this. And you can kind of do this however you want. So I'm going to play around a little bit with this. I'm going to start by going to shapes, and I am thinking of starting with these diamond or triangle shapes right here. So I'm going to start with this actually. And I'm going to bring it in right here. And you know what? It fits perfectly right there. So I'm actually going to just keep duplicating this and make sure it hits right up against the other one. So actually, you know what? Just to help me, I'm going to zoom in so that way I can see what it is that I'm doing. And to zoom in, you use the magnifying glass. And I'm going to keep doing this. So I'm going to keep duplicating and keep bringing it down. And I'm going to do that until I don't have any more room. And that's right about here. So if I were to zoom out, so if I hit zoom and I go to zoom out, notice how it almost goes all the way down, but not quite. But you know what? That's okay. And now for the fun of it, I think this is where I'm going to start changing the color. And let's say I wanted to change all of these and make them the same color. What I can do is I can click on all of them. So I would click on one, and then I would hit shift, and then I would keep clicking until I had all of them selected. Just like that. And now I want to do a gradient with these. So I'm going to go to gradient. Now I'm going to do this orange color right here. That light orange. You know what? Maybe I'll do the dark orange, just like that. I like the dark orange better. Very sort of Halloween-y. And now if I were to zoom out again, you can see that that's what I did with this side over here. Now let's say I wanted to take this and move it right over here. Well, I can do that. If I select each of these again, I have to make sure I select all of them. Now if I go to edit, duplicate, I now made all of them, and I just have to drag them over. And that's where this part is. So how cool is that? So there's the start of my Mary Blair haunted castle, house, whatever you want to call. Let's go to this middle part. Let's say I wanted to add some windows. So I'm going to go to shape. And there's actually a really cool window shape that's just right here. So I'm going to get this. It's called flowchart. What does it say? Flowchart OR. I don't know what OR means. But I'm going to go to flowchart OR. And I'm going to make a giant window right here. Just like that. Now one thing I want to do is I kind of want to make the borders a little bit thicker. So already we have the border color as black. I want to change the border weight, and I want to change it to 4. And see how that makes it nice and thick. So if I wanted to, I could even make it thicker. Just like that. Now I want to change this to some kind of gradient color. So maybe this time I go to gradient, and maybe this time I do this dark yellow, so that way it looks like it's glowing inside. Ooh, that looks really creepy. I actually really like that. So there's a good start. And maybe now what I do underneath here is maybe I do something that might look like a doorway. So I'm going to go to shape again. And I see one thing that looks like a doorway right over here, even though it's on its side, but we can turn that around. So I'm going to click on flowchart delay. I'm going to click it. There's a perfect doorway. And I'm actually going to rotate it. And the way to rotate it, remember, is go to that little circle and turn it until you get it the direction you want. And this is actually a really cool like ghost shape. I might use this for something else later. So I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger because that was a teeny tiny door. And I'm going to definitely make this a black color just because that gives it a nice kind of spooky feeling right there. And so now we've got 2 more towers, and maybe we need something up top on the towers. So maybe let me first start with these 2 towers since I finished with those already. So maybe I go and I get, let's say, just a triangle. So that way we can have it up top. And maybe this time I want to do a gradient, and I want to do like a black gradient, just like that. And then I can go to edit, I can duplicate it, and I can bring it right over. And that looks actually really, really creepy right there. Just that alone looks actually really, really good, boys and girls. But we need to keep going because we got all this extra space. So now maybe this time I just want to do maybe some simple squares inside. So I'm going to go back to my shapes. Maybe this time what I do is I'm going to go back to my rectangle shape. And I'm going to click. I'm going to zoom in here just so everyone can see. Maybe what I do is I make the square smaller. So that way maybe I would have like 2 squares kind of like right next to each other. Almost as if I was doing something like this right here. So maybe I do that, and maybe let's say I hit duplicate. I move this over, but I realize, oh, that's a little too small. So maybe now what I need to do is maybe I need to make this a tiny bit bigger. And that means I need to make this a little bit bigger. And what I'm trying to do is I'm really trying to just make sure that these kind of like meet a bit. So that way, see how I now have this pattern. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to click on both of them, and I'm going to hit edit and duplicate. And now that made both of them appear, so I can just bring it down. And once again, I'm going to click on both of them. I'm going to hit edit and then duplicate. But if I notice, this one kind of goes off. So I'm going to actually unclick. I'm going to actually take this one. I'm going to make it a little bit thinner. Just like that. And now what I can do is similar to what I did here. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to click on all of these rectangles. And I'm going to duplicate this and bring it over here. Just like that. Now I need to fill these in. And I'm going to do that with another gradient. And I think this time I'm going to do the red. I'm going to do them individually. So, and notice I'm trying to keep to like spooky type colors. I'm not doing a lot of like pink or blues. I'm trying to keep them more dark, more fall colors, especially since this is meant to be like a haunted house or a haunted castle. And that's exactly what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about mostly using warm or fire colors, especially since there are a lot of the colors that you would see in the autumn. And there are a lot of colors that you would see when going to, like, let's say a haunted house or seeing pictures of haunted houses or something like that. You would see a lot more of those colors. So now what we need are maybe some towers or the top of the buildings over here. So I'm actually going to go back into shapes. I'm going to go and look for triangle. I'm actually going to go with this right triangle right here. I'm going to click it. I actually like how that looks. I'm going to move it up. I'm going to make sure that it fits. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on it. And if I notice as I zoom in, it kind of goes over a little bit. So I'm going to make sure that it fits perfectly. And make sure it's not overlapping too much. Just like that. And now I can actually change the color. I can change it to whatever I want. And remember, you're allowed to do any kind of color you want, boys and girls. Okay? Just because Masika's doing certain things doesn't mean you have to do the same thing as Masika. You can change up the color to whatever you want. Now, I actually want to do the same thing over here, so I am going to duplicate this. But notice if I put this over here, it's not leaning up against the tower like this one is. In order to get this to flip around, what I need to make sure is first that this is clicked and selected. And remember, the way to know that it's selected is the bounding box, the blue box, is around it. Now I'm going to go to Arrange, and I'm going to go to the option that says Rotate. And if I hit Flip horizontally, now all of a sudden, there is that flip. And it looks really, really cool. And I think the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give this like maybe one or two little residents, maybe some little ghosts. So I liked this shape before, so I'm going to get that shape again. So I'm going to go into Shapes. I'm going to go to Flowchart Delay. I'm going to click. I'm going to rotate. Just like that. I'm going to zoom in on this guy so we can see what I do. So the first thing is I'm going to change the color. I'm actually going to change it to a gradient. And I changed it to white radial gradient. Kind of gives it a nice little look. And now what I want is I actually want to give him a face. So I'm going to go once again to Shapes. I'm going to go to the oval. And I'm going to click on the oval, and there's one eye, but I don't like that, so I'm going to make that smaller, and I'm going to kind of really make that an oval shape. And I'm going to fill it in with a solid, just like that. And in order to make sure I get the same shape, I'm going to go to Edit, and then I'm going to go to Duplicate. And I can put this wherever I want. Maybe I have it maybe closer like that. And now what I want to do is I want to give him a mouth. So I'm actually going to go up to this line tool. It's right next to the arrow. So I'm going to click on the line tool, and I'm going to go down to Scribble. And Scribble is exactly what it sounds like. It's as if I was taking a pencil and scribbling. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to scribble his mouth, just like that. Now let's say I really liked this guy and I wanted to just duplicate him. So I would have to click on every single piece of him. So the mouth, I would hit Shift. I click on each of the eyes, and then I click the body. And then if I hit Edit and then Duplicate, there's a little friend. And I can move him just like that. And if I even wanted to, I could make even more just by doing the same exact thing. Now I feel like this isn't quite done, so maybe what I need are maybe a couple more windows, maybe some in these areas. But this is where you can have a little bit of fun and a little bit of freedom, so you don't really have to completely copy what Masika's doing. So if you want, you can have some fun right now and make some more shapes to complete your haunted castle. And I hope you had fun doing this, boys and girls.